This is Korea News for April 7, 2022. On the morning of December 2, 2016, the topic of a radio current affairs program was President Park Geun-hye's clothes. It was around today and tomorrow when the National Assembly's proposal for impeachment proceedings against President Park was presented. The anchor asked the reporter, how many clothes did President Park buy in the 4 years since he took office? The reporter replied that it was 370 pieces. In 2013, the first year of her inauguration, there were reports of 122 and 67 of the clothes she bought. He said that the average would be 94 suits. If you multiply 4 years by 94 wears per year, you get 370 suits. The anchor asked what the total cost of the clothes was. The reporter said, women's suits near the Gangnam dressing room where President Park bought clothes are at least 450,000 won to 3 million won. He said that the average cost of a pair of clothes was 2 million won, and if 370 pieces were worn, the cost of clothes for 4 years would be 740 million won. By averaging the reports with twice the error, then multiplying them twice by guessing leverage to get a specific figure of 740 million won. The boldness of using simple and ignorant calculation methods proudly comes to mind. A few hours after the broadcast ended, the Democratic Party spokesperson's office commented, President Park Geun-hye's clothes cost 740 million won, a bribe or a budget. Since then, 740 million won has become an official figure for attacking President Park Geun-hye. The controversy over the price of President Park's clothes came from CCTV footage from his regular dressing room. It was a scene where Choi Soon-sil was calculating the price of President Park's costume in 50,000 won bills. Opposition parties questioned whether it was a bribe if at least hundreds of thousands of won were transacted in cash. Scenes similar to those at that time are unfolding like a parallel theory these days. Only the main character was changed from Park Geun-hye to Kim Young-suk. The netizen investigation team found 178 outfits that Kim showed off at her official event. According to Park Geun-hye's method of calculating the cost of clothes, each piece is worth 2 million won, which is 360 million won. There were also testimonies that after Mrs. Kim purchased a hanbok worth 7 million won from an important intangible cultural asset artisan, her assistant, who accompanied her, paid 50,000 won. The aid came from a former deputy spokesperson for the Democratic Party who urged him to reveal whether President Park's clothes were a bribe or a budget 6 years ago. A spokesperson for the Blue House said, "What's the problem with paying for clothes in cash?" She said it was a courtesy to artisans. The only good thing about receiving a large amount in cash is hiding the size of sales. She considered the National Treasure craftsman as a suspect in tax evasion to cover up the black money allegation of the president's wife. Former Democratic Party leader Lee Nak-yeon said, "It is embarrassingly low-level politics that reveals the lack of understanding of the public role of the president's spouse. It would mean that the clothes of the president's wife, who represent the country, determine the dignity of the country." Kim's active outside activities are well known. In her second year, Kim visited 45 countries on her 28 overseas tours, despite her corona crisis. She is said to be jointly numbered with President Lee Myung-bok's wife Kim Yoon-ok in the number of wives of previous presidents, and is said to be the sole number one in the number of countries visited by her. She said that Mrs. Kim visited most of the overseas tourist spots that she hardly had time to visit. The Blue House commented, it was because of the request of the visiting country, even though no one asked. It turns out that the actual situation is different. She also released a commemorative photo of her at the Taj Mahal, taken by Kim during her solo visit to India without her president. Even if the visit of the wife of the President of the Republic of Korea to the scenic spot contributed to the promotion of her national prestige, it would not be comparable to the diplomatic activity of the president himself. When the Democratic Party made a comment arguing about the price of President Park Geun-hye's clothes, inside the party, I can't even remember hearing that they restrained it as embarrassingly low-level politics. When the impeachment candle lit up 6 years ago, on the one hand, there was an expectation that our politics would become a little clearer. Opposition parties even hacked the president's fashion and hairstyle. Seeing that, I thought that if they came to power, they would only live on do for 5 years. However, the Moon Jae-in administration remained the same as they pointed out. It is unknown whether they had misunderstood that their power would last forever, or if they had the confidence to cover up their wealth through prosecutorial reform. Treat others the way you want them to be treated is the golden rule of human relationships that runs through all ages. If you point a finger at someone, it also means that you will be pointed at the same way. The arrows that people of the Moon administration shot at President Park Geun-hye are flying towards First Lady Kim Young-suk in 6 years. Also, 5 years from now, the spouse of the next president, Yoon Suk-yeol, will be the target. This is a rule that has been repeated every time power comes and goes. Unification Minister Lee In-young's press conference was an opportunity to reaffirm how unrealistic the Moon Jae-in administration's perception of North Korea is. Minister Lee said, "It is neither just nor appropriate to conclude that the peace process on the Korean peninsula is a total failure in some areas." He also said, "The situation on the Korean peninsula has been stably managed and the war crisis and military tension have been relieved more. First of all, I have to ask on what grounds Minister Lee is confident that the peace process on the Korean peninsula has not failed. The Korean peninsula peace process is based on the Berlin Initiative announced by President Moon Jae-in in July 2017, and aims to eliminate hostile tensions and the threat of war between the two Koreas, and to establish complete denuclearization and lasting peace on the Korean peninsula. However, North Korea has carried out armed provocations 12 times in total this year, during South Korea's presidential election. The definitive decision was the intercontinental ballistic missile launch on the 24th of last month. It has been 4 years and 4 months since North Korea's ICBM provocation, so it is a return to the nuclear tensions of the early days of the Moon administration. Despite this, the situation on the Korean peninsula has been stably managed and the war crisis and military tension have eased. As the minister thinks like this, the perception of the Buddha is also an amateurish one. Through the mouth of Kim Jong-un's sister, Kim Yo-jong, North Korea is blatantly threatening to destroy the South with nuclear force if South Korea chooses a confrontation. He also addressed Defense Minister Seo Wook, who hinted at the possibility of a preemptive strike, saying, "A preemptive strike against a nuclear weapon country is a delusion. It really is the courage of a madman." In such a situation, the position of the Ministry of Unification is that it is recognizing it seriously. Nuclear attack, military annihilation, and annihilation are being discussed, but it is the South Korean Ministry of Unification that is carrying out an idle diplomatic rhetoric with the intent of knowing well. The current government's North Korea policy has nothing to look forward to. The Moon administration's 5-year obedience to North Korea was a time of security catastrophe that only bought the North time to develop its nuclear weapons, even if Kim Yo-jong mocked her as a boiled cowhead and fired a lot of missiles, but remained silent like a sweet potato. It turned out that the clinging to the declaration of an end to the war as a key process in the peace process on the Korean peninsula was also played by North Korea's fake peace show. Minister Lee said that this is his advice for the new government, saying, "I asked him to come up with a policy for peace, out of expectations for the conservative government. Ministers of countries threatened with nuclear weapons are voicing such nonsense. A tight regulatory list on bottle labels is enough to show the reality of a regulatory republic. If you look at the regulations enforced by each of the 8 government ministries, you will be suffocating even if you are not an alcoholic beverage manufacturer or sales operator." Moreover, the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety and the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy are applying multiple regulations, 2 each, so there are as many as 10 indicated on the label alone. The Ministry of Food and Drug Safety made calorie labeling compulsory, and the Ministry of Environment newly added a new name to the Alcohol Control Department by establishing a Recycling Ease of Recycling Rating Labeling Regulation. The Fair Trade Commission demands that the items of return/exchange and the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family contain the provisions of the Youth Protection Act on this small label. The industry is complaining that there is no end to the armbanding of public officials as the National Assembly, not just administrative agencies, is considering making Braille display mandatory for the visually impaired. If you look at them individually, they do not have their own justifications, but if you tie up multiple layers of restrictions, monitoring, supervision, and discipline, you become a monster. A further burden is that the regulatory list changes frequently. Competitively issued regulations by this department and that institution must be directly indicated on the label, which is an additional cost to companies. Creating new labels costs billions of dollars each year. Canned beer has to contact the foreign headquarters and change the container itself. Bottle labels are just one aspect of overregulation. In fields such as architecture and distribution, regulations on bee swarms jointly implemented by ministries are flying all over the place. In addition to laws and regulations, companies were also imprisoned in the name of notices and guidelines. In addition, regulations in the labor market such as the uniform 52-hour workweek, the ban on the flexible working system, and the rigid dispatch/contract system are surrounded by layers. There is no other way to explain the fact that SK Hynix's 120 trillion won Yongin plant construction has been standing still for 3 years. Regulations increase in proportion to the increase in the number of civil servants and laws. The bigger the government and the more active the legislation, the more difficult it will be for business operators. Even before the inauguration of a new government, the Presidential Transition Committee will have to come up with a roadmap for a small government with extraordinary determination. Candidate Han Deok-soo also needs to understand the achievements of the Regulatory Reform Committee, which he will be co-chairing, over the past 24 years. Ideas for regulatory reform are all out there. There is a regulatory sunset system, and the Trump administration's 1 in 2 out system is worth trying. The key is a strong will. Thank you for watching today. Please like and subscribe.